My name is Holly Yeager, and I am 62 years old. 3 weeks before the hospital honored my 40 years of service, my daughter called to tell me she would be at the beach. She said it the way you cancel a dentist appointment. Her husband's family had rented a house on the coast, and the dates ran straight through the Saturday my name was going on a brass plaque. So I gave her seat away. I invited the daughter of my best friend, a woman who died 3 years ago and never got a plaque at all. What the hospital did on live television that night is not the part that broke me. What my daughter offered me 19 minutes before the cameras went on, that is the part I still cannot say out loud without stopping. This is where we sit with the quiet moments families do not talk about. The empty chair. The call nobody returns. The thing somebody finally says out loud after 30 years of not saying it. If a story here ever feels like it was written about your kitchen table, tell us in the comments. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. The call came on the 30th of May, a little after 7. I was standing at the sink with a dish towel over my shoulder. It was the third time I had told Marissa the date, and I had started to hear how that sounded, so I kept my voice light. She said the name of the beach town before she said anything else. Emerald Isle. The Pells rent the same house every June, 9 hours from my kitchen, and Adrienne pays for all of it. And it has become a fact of nature in that family, like weather. I asked if there was any way to move a few days. Marissa laughed, not unkindly. "Mom, the house is booked. It'd be so rude to bail on them." Behind her, I heard a woman's voice, warm and unhurried, the way a good hostess talks over a room. "Tell her we'll send something lovely." That was Adrienne. She has never once raised her voice at me in 7 years. She does not have to. I said, "Of course." I have said of course my whole life. I said it to charge nurses at 2 in the morning and to my ex-husband's attorney and to a surgeon who once threw an instrument at a wall. It comes out of me like a reflex, and by the time I hear it, it is already true. We talked about sunscreen. We talked about whether Grant's back was better. I dried the same plate twice. What I did not tell her was that at 9 that morning, in an office on the second floor of the hospital I had worked in since 1986, a woman named Bernadette Cray had asked me to come in Monday and bring my reading glasses. Here is what 40 years looks like from the inside. I started at Cedar Bluff Regional in June of 1986, 22 years old, with a nursing certificate I paid for by running a line at a cannery in Sandusky. I spent most of those years on nights in Operating Room 3, which is the cold one. My husband left in 1999, when Marissa was 6, and I raised her on a schedule that meant I was asleep when she got home and gone when she went to bed. And I made up the difference the only way I knew, which was money. My knees went bad around 2022. The right one is worse. I have postponed the surgery 4 times, twice for staffing and twice because the deductible landed in a bad month. My pension will pay me $2,900 a month. I still owe $61,000 on a home equity loan I took out in pieces, a little for Ruth's out-of-pocket bills, a little for a wedding, a little for a semester of graduate school that did not finish. And every month for 7 years on the first $600 has left my account and landed in my daughter's. Car insurance. Phone. What I called the cushion, because that is a nicer word than the other ones. I never asked her for it back and I never mentioned it. Not once. Not at Christmas. Not when the roof went. I have never asked anybody for anything in my life. I thought that was a virtue. I thought it was the whole of my character, the load-bearing wall. It took me until this June to understand what a person teaches other people when she never once says she needs something. I met Ruth Delano in the fall of 1987, on a night shift nobody wanted. She was 2 years older and about 4 inches shorter, and she taught me how to stand for 12 hours without wrecking my back, which is a skill, and how to tell a family the truth in a hallway, which is a different skill, and harder. We were friends for 36 years. She had a laugh like a screen door. When her husband left in 2004, she moved into the rental behind the Presbyterian church and never complained about it. And when I could not afford daycare, she took Marissa on Tuesdays and Thursdays and taught her to make pie crust with a fork. Ruth was diagnosed in the spring of 2022 and died in September of the following year, 61 years old. In a room 2 floors above the one where we met. I went back to work 2 days after the funeral. Everybody told me that was strong. It was not strong. It was the only place where my hands knew what to do without asking me. There is a thing she used to say when someone sent flowers instead of coming, or a card instead of coming, or a very nice basket instead of coming. She would look at the basket and she would look at me. "Show up, Holly. Anybody can send something." Her daughter Nell still works in this building. She moved to the unit desk after the funeral, clerical, phones and charts and insurance faxes, and she takes the long way around the surgical wing. I had walked past that girl in a hallway 300 times in 3 years. I realized, standing at my sink with the dish towel still on my shoulder, that I had not asked her one real question in all of it. Bernadette Cray runs the hospital foundation, and Dale Brandt is the attorney who handles their gift agreements, and on Monday morning they were both in the room, which told me something before either of them spoke. She started with a name I had not thought about in a long time: Arthur Kestner. February of 1998, a ruptured appendix that had gone septic. A Tuesday night, my patient. He lived. He is 81 now, and he sold his equipment business in 2019, and his family has decided to make a gift to this hospital in my name. Bernadette put the number on the table without any ceremony at all. $1 million. I heard the air conditioner. I heard my own pulse, which after 4 decades in an operating room is a sound I recognize the way other people recognize their car. Then she explained the part that mattered. The donors had left the shape of it to me. I could direct the whole million into a named endowment. I would choose the name, and I would choose the first recipient, 1 nurse or 1 aide, tuition and living costs, and it would fund somebody else every year after that. Or the family would instead make a personal distribution of $250,000 into my retirement, and the endowment would not exist. Dale said the designation had to be signed and sealed by Thursday the 18th, and that the envelope would be opened on the stage, live, at the ceremony on the 20th, because Channel 9 was covering it, and the Kestners wanted the surprise. I said that was a lot of theater for a nurse. Dale did not smile. He said, "It's their money, and they'd like it to be a good night." I got as far as the parking lot before I thought about my knees. I got as far as my car before I thought about my daughter. It bothers me still, that it was in that order. That night, I put the laptop on the kitchen table and did the arithmetic I had been avoiding since 2022. 250,000 pays off the 61,000. It buys the right knee in August and the left one in the spring, and it buys the 6 weeks off after each, which is the part nobody budgets for. It means I stop working nights at 62 instead of 67. It means the roof, finally, and a furnace that does not sound like a man clearing his throat. I wrote the numbers on the back of a pharmacy receipt because I think better in pen. Then a second thought came in, clean and quiet, and sat down next to the first one. If I told Marissa there was $1 million attached to that Saturday, she would come. I did not have to wonder about it. I knew it the way you know your own hallway in the dark. She would move the beach house, or she would fly back for the night, or the Pells would suddenly discover the dates were flexible after all, and there would be a photograph of the 3 of us under that brass plaque, and everybody would say what a beautiful family. I sat with that for a while. The refrigerator cycled on. I did not like the woman who had that thought, and I could not get her to leave the table, and the worst of it was how practical she sounded. I closed the laptop. I did not call anybody. I went to bed at 11 and lay there doing the only math I had left, which was 7 years of first-of-the-month transfers, and I stopped before I got to the total, because some numbers you already know. That Sunday, I drove the 70 minutes down to Dublin for dinner, because I go once a month, and because I wanted to look at my daughter's face when the beach came up. The Pell house sits behind a low brick wall with lights along the drive. The table seats 12. There are cloth napkins on an ordinary Sunday. Adrienne met me at the door with both hands out and told me I looked rested, which is what she says instead of hello. Grant carved. He had just been made a regional manager at the family title company, which is a thing that can happen when your last name is on the sign, and he said it with such genuine pleasure that it was hard to hold against him. Grant has never in his life had a thought that was unkind. He has also never had one that was inconvenient. Marissa poured the wine and talked about the coast the way you talk about jury duty, an obligation she had made peace with. And I noticed the watch on her wrist. Thin gold. The kind where you cannot even guess. Adrian said the thing she always says, resting one hand flat on the tablecloth. We take care of our people, Holly. She means it. That is what makes it work. Later, over pie, Marissa mentioned that Adrian had covered the down payment on their house in 2021, and she said it in passing, the way you would mention a neighbor lending a ladder, and I understood that I was hearing about it 3 years late because it had not occurred to anyone that I would want to know. Then she patted my arm on her way to the kitchen. You'll be fine, Mom. You're always fine. I drove home in the dark with the radio off, and somewhere around the county line I understood that she was not being cruel. She was reading a chart. She was reading the chart I had spent 33 years writing. On Tuesday the 9th, Bernadette sent me the seating sheet. Honorees get 2 places at the head table, and mine were printed on a single page in a font somebody had chosen to look like handwriting. Chair 1A, Holly Yeager, Perioperative Services. Chair 2A, blank. She needed the name by the 12th for the place card. I typed 3 different answers and sent none of them. I told myself there was still time, which is the kind of thing you say when you have already decided to wait for a person to become somebody else. I printed the sheet anyway and put it on the refrigerator under a magnet from a heating and cooling company, my brother's. And every time I opened the door for milk, there it was, my name and an empty rectangle beside it. It occurred to me that I had been holding a seat for that girl since she was 20. Thanksgiving 2013, when she went to a boyfriend's family in Cincinnati and I kept a plate warm until 9. The Christmas she had the flu, and then posted a photograph from a ski lift. My 60th, which we celebrated in July because June had not worked out. I have never once made a scene about any of it. I want you to understand that I did not think of these as grievances. I thought of them as weather, and I thought of myself as somebody who had a good coat. It was only when the chair had a number on it, a real chair, 2A, that I started counting. And that is a dangerous thing to start doing at 62, because the number comes out fast, and once you have it, you cannot put it back. So on Wednesday the 10th, I did the thing I have never done. I asked. I called my daughter, and I said that the ceremony mattered to me. Out loud, in words, and that I would pay the change fees on both tickets, so she and Grant could fly back Saturday morning and be at the beach again by Sunday night. I had already called the airline. $740 for the pair. I had the confirmation code written on the pharmacy receipt with the rest of my arithmetic. There was a pause on the line, and in that pause I heard a screen door and gulls, which meant she was outside, which meant Adrian was inside. Then she said, Mom, Adrian already paid for the house. It'd be rude. I said the house does not know if you are in it. She said that was not the point, and she was right. It was not, and neither of us said what the point was. Then she brightened. Because she is not a hard person, she is a managed one. We'll do something for you in July. Something really nice. I said that sounded lovely. Something. That word again. In that family, something is always an object. Something has a bow on it, and a card in a florist's handwriting, and it arrives in a van, and a person signs for it, and nobody has to change a single plan. I hung up and stood in my hallway a while. Up to that afternoon I had let myself believe this was a scheduling problem. Calendars, dates, bad luck. The kind of thing that can be fixed with $740 and a little goodwill. That was the first thing I lost, and I did not even feel it go. I found Nell Delano the next day, on the landing of Stairwell B, eating a sandwich out of a grocery bag with her badge turned around. She jumped when the door opened. I said I was hiding too, which was half true, and I sat down on the step below her because my knee will not do the same step twice. She has her mother's hands, same short nails, same way of holding a sandwich like it might get away. I asked how long she had been eating lunch in this stairwell, and she said since she moved to the unit desk. So, 3 years, and she said it lightly. The way you say a thing you have decided is not worth minding. She was in the nursing program at the community college, and she withdrew in the spring of 2022, 6 weeks after her mother's diagnosis, because somebody had to drive to Columbus twice a week. She is 29. She works the desk and answers phones and faxes prior authorizations to people who do not call back. Clipped to her lanyard is her mother's old badge clip, the plastic one with the chipped blue enamel, and she saw me see it and put her hand over it. Not embarrassed. Just protective. In 3 years, that girl has not asked this hospital for one thing. Not a shift change, not a favor, not a letter. I asked whether she still had her textbooks. She said they were in a bin in her closet, and then she said, "They're old editions now," in a voice that was trying very hard to sound like it was making a joke. I went back to the unit and sat down at a computer and did not chart anything for 4 full minutes. Bernadette called on Friday about the deadline, and I let her get all the way through her reminder before I asked the question I had practiced in my car. Could I name my daughter? I made it sound casual. I even laughed a little at the end of it, the way you do when you want a question to be able to leave the room without you. Bernadette did not laugh, but she did not hesitate either. She said yes. The honoree may designate any individual. The endowment can be structured as a directed award. A named recipient, tuition, living stipend, the terms drafted around that person. And the family has been clear that the choice is mine. There was a silence while I wrote nothing on a pad. Then I heard myself ask the second question, and this is the one I would take back if I could. I asked whether the announcement would be public. Bernadette said yes, live. That was the whole idea. I said, "Right, of course," and thanked her and hung up. I sat in the car in the north lot with the keys in my lap. I want to be honest about what happened in that car because it is the only way the rest of this means anything. I was not weighing whether my daughter deserved $1 million. I was calculating whether $1 million announced on television, in front of 300 people and a camera, would be enough to get her in a chair. That is a different question. That is not a mother's question at all. And it had come to me easily in my own voice, without any effort whatsoever. I want to stop here for a second, because this is the part I have never told anybody. I sat in a hospital parking lot and did the math on what it would cost to make my own child show up. If you have ever done that math, for a daughter, a son, a brother, put it in the comments. Math. I would like to know I am not the only one. And if you are new here, subscribe. My brother Wade came out that weekend to look at the condenser unit, which has been dying politely since 2021. He is 58. He does heating and cooling, and he is the only person alive who remembers me at 9. He got the fan running and then sat on my back steps with a coffee, and I told him about the $250,000 because I tell Wade things. He got very still, and then he said what he always says, which is the sensible thing. Take the 250, Hall, fix your knees, don't make a scene. I said nobody had said anything about a scene. He turned the cup around in his hands, and then, because he thought it was funny, because he genuinely thought it was a story about how kids are, he told me that Marissa had called him back in April, and somewhere in the conversation she had asked him whether there was money attached to Mom's thing. He said it with a little laugh at the end. He waited for me to laugh too. I looked out at the yard where the grass needed doing, and I understood that my only ally in this family had just told me to be quiet and had handed me the reason I could not. I called Marissa on Sunday under the cover of asking about the weather down there. She was in a store, I could hear the beeping of a register, and we did the small talk we are good at, which is the kind where nobody has to look at anybody. Then she said, in the lightest voice she owns, "Hey, so, Uncle Wade said something about your work thing. Is it, like, a bonus?" And there it was, out in the open air, in a checkout line 400 miles away. Something happens to me in the seconds after a question like that. My pulse goes down, not up. It has been doing that since 1991, when a 14-year-old came in off a highway, and the room got loud and I found out what kind of animal I am. So my voice was perfectly even. I said, "It's a plaque, honey." She said that was nice, and asked whether they were doing a dinner, and I said chicken or fish like everybody. And I stood in my kitchen holding a phone and understood that I had just lied to my daughter for the first time in 33 years. Not a soft lie, not the Santa kind or the your haircut is fine kind. A hard, deliberate, load-bearing lie, told to protect a number. I told myself I was protecting her from the temptation. That was not true either. I was protecting myself from finding out how fast she would move if she knew. That is the whole thing right there, and I could not see it yet. And it would be 6 days before somebody said it out loud in my own voice. The banquet room at Cedar Bluff is a multi-purpose hall with a bad ceiling and a good floor, and on Monday the 15th they were setting it up early because a wedding had the space the following weekend. I went down on my break. I told myself I was checking the ramp for the Kessners, because Arthur uses a walker now. That was not why I went. The linens were half on. 2 men were rolling out a section of parquet. The head table sat empty on the low riser with its skirt already pinned, and the chairs were pushed in tight the way hotel chairs always are, facing the table, facing the work. Mine had a card. Chair 1A, my name, the fake handwriting. And beside it, Chair 2A, and a blank card lying face up on the cloth. I stood there long enough that one of the setup men asked if I needed something. I said no. Then I went around the end of the table and I put my hands on the back of Chair 2A. I did not take it away. I have thought about why not, and the honest answer is that I could not. Not yet. Not that day. What I did was turn it. I pulled it out and swung it a quarter turn so that it faced the room instead of the table. Not a place set for somebody who had promised, just a chair. Open, facing whoever might walk in. It looked wrong. It looked like a mistake somebody would fix. I left it that way and went back upstairs and scrubbed in on a gallbladder, and for the rest of that day and every day after, when things got quiet, I saw that chair turned out toward an empty room. Ruth would have had one sentence for it, and she would have said it while looking at a flower arrangement. Show up, Holly. Anybody can send something. Adrienne Pell called me directly that same evening, which she had not done in over a year. Her voice comes down the line like something poured. She asked about my knees before anything else, and she remembered which one. And that is not an act. That is a discipline, and it is worth respecting for what it is. Then she got to it. She said Marissa was exhausted. She said the girl works full-time and manages the office remodel and has been carrying more than anybody sees. She said, "We take the burden off her, Holly. That's all we've ever done." I said I was not asking anyone to carry anything. Adrienne said gently, "That of course I wasn't. I never do." And something in the way she said it made the hair go up on my arms. Then she offered. She would send an arrangement to the ceremony. She used a florist in Columbus. She said they do beautiful work, and would I prefer something in white or something with color? She would have it there by 4. She would have my name on the card and Marissa's name on the card and Grant's, all 3, so the table would not look empty. I said, white was fine. That is the phrase I keep coming back to, the one I still turn over at 2 in the morning. So the table would not look empty. Not so, it would not be empty. She was not lying to me. In her mind, she was solving the problem I actually had, which was optics, and she was solving it generously, with her own money, on short notice. And when I hung up, I sat with the fact that this woman knew the exact date of my ceremony, and had known it for months, the same as everybody else. Nell caught me by the elevators the next morning and asked, with a great deal of apologizing built into the front of it, whether I would write her a recommendation. The hospital has a small tuition assistance award for support staff, $2,000, applications due in July. She had the folder with her, the old one from her first application in 2019, because they want the original transcripts and she had never gotten them back. She handed it over and went to answer a phone. I opened it in the break room. Transcripts, a photocopied license, a personal statement written by a 22-year-old who used the word passionate twice, and behind all of it, folded into quarters and soft at the creases, a page of scheduling, Ruth's handwriting, 6 weeks of shifts, the ones she had traded away, Tuesday nights and every other Saturday, so that her daughter could be in a classroom. I know that handwriting better than my own mother's. She wrote her sevens with a bar through them. I sat in a break room with a vending machine humming and a microwave with somebody's popcorn burned into it, and I did not cry, because I do not do that at work, and because 38 years in this building has made that a matter of professional posture rather than feeling. I put the page back exactly where it had been. Then I looked at the award amount again. $2,000 does not cover a semester. It does not cover half of one. It is the kind of number that lets an institution feel like it has done something, and it is not anybody's fault, and it is not enough. The right knee went that same afternoon, 40 minutes into a routine case. I had been standing on a stool at the head of the table, and when I stepped down, the joint simply did not accept my weight. I did not fall. I got a hand on the rail and I got out of the sterile field without touching anything, and the case went on fine, and afterward I sat in the sub-sterile hallway with my leg out straight and my heart doing that slow thing again. Teresa Vance came and crouched in front of me. She has run this department for 6 years and she is very good at her job, which meant she did not ask if I was all right. She looked at the leg. She said, "I'm taking you off the OR board through the end of the month." I said I could do a room from a stool. She said no. She said, "Holly, I'm not going to be the one who lets you finish 40 years on a gurney." She was being kind. It was the kindest thing anybody did for me that month, and it took the floor out from under me anyway, because standing in that room is the only argument I have ever made for myself. Not talking, not asking. Standing. That night, I lay on the couch with a bag of frozen corn on my leg and the foundation's designation form on my lap. 1 line for the name of the fund and 1 line for the first recipient. I looked at that second line for a long time. Then I got up, which took a while, and went to the drawer, and I did not take out a pen. I wrote my daughter's name in pencil, Marissa Pell, on the recipient line, in the mechanical pencil I use for the crossword. I told myself it was so I could look at it. That is what I said, out loud, in an empty living room, to nobody, which should have told me something. And it did look good. That is the part I have to say. It looked like a photograph that had not been taken yet. The two of us under the plaque, her hand on my arm, her face doing the thing it does when a camera finds it, and the caption underneath about a mother and a daughter and 40 years. It looked like the end of a very long argument I have been having with myself since 1999 about whether I did it right. I put the form on the kitchen table and I went to bed. In the morning, I made coffee and walked past it. That night, I ate standing up and walked past it. For 2 days, that form sat there with my child's name written on it in graphite, and I did not erase it and I did not ink it. And both days I told myself I was thinking. I was not thinking. I was waiting to see if wanting it badly enough would make it clean. I want you to know that about me before the rest of this happens, because there is a version of this story where I am the sensible one and everybody else is greedy, and that version is a lie, and I have no use for it. Grant is the one who did it, and he did it out of pure friendliness, which is the only way anything true ever gets to me in that family. He wanted my mother's dressing recipe, and while he was at it, he shared the family calendar with me, so I could see when they'd be back and pick a weekend to come down. I opened it on my phone at the unit desk on Wednesday the 17th. 10 days blocked in pale green. Emerald Isle. Pell. And under the entry, in gray, the way those calendars log things. Created January 14th, 2026. I sat and looked at that date. I told them about the ceremony on the 22nd of December, at my kitchen table, over pie, with the calendar on the refrigerator and everybody in the room. Marissa put it in her phone while I watched her do it. 3 weeks and change later, somebody in that family picked a 10-day window and put it on top of the 20th of June. Not a conflict. Nobody double-booked. There was nothing on the coast that had to happen that week. A house was chosen, and dates were chosen, and my Saturday was one of the things the dates went over, like a bump you feel through the tires and do not slow down for. I closed the phone and went and stood in the medication room for a minute, which is where everybody in this building goes to have a feeling. Then I came out and answered a call light. I did not phone her that day. I wanted to be sure I could keep my voice where I keep it. I called Marissa an hour later. I did not accuse her of anything. I have watched enough families come apart in hallways to know that the fastest way to lose the truth is to reach for it with both hands. So I asked one question, in a flat voice, like a scheduler. When did you all book the beach house? There was a silence on that line I will hear for the rest of my life. And then, for about the length of a held breath, my daughter told me the truth. Mom, they're the ones who show up for us. That was all. No defense on the front of it, no softener on the back. It came out the way things come out when they have been sitting behind the teeth for a couple of years. Then she heard herself. And she started to build the wall back. Fast and neat. The way you would expect from somebody who works in communications. They had already committed. Adrienne had put down a deposit in the fall. Grant's cousins were flying in. It was the only week the whole family could do. Every sentence was true. Every sentence was a brick. By the end of it, she was explaining to me why I should feel good about the arrangement, and she finished the way she always finishes, which is, "You'll be fine, Mom. You're always fine." And I said, "Okay, honey," and let her go, and stood in my hallway. Here is the part I did not expect. She was right. They are the ones who show up for her. They show up with a house and a deposit and a job and a down payment, and they show up in June, on a schedule, every year, and no one has to be asked twice. What I lost that morning was not my daughter. It was the story where she was innocent. That evening, I opened 7 years of bank statements. I do not know exactly what I was looking for. Something to be angry about, probably. Anger is a very tidy room, and I wanted to go stand in it. What I found instead was my own handwriting all over the walls. $600 a month. On the 1st. Since June of 2019. 84 transfers. $50,400. Then the wedding in September of 2019. $34,000. The venue and the band and the dress her father did not help with. A semester of graduate school in 2021 that stopped in November. 4 tires in the winter of 2020. The security deposit and first month on the apartment in Grandview in 2017. I lined them up in a column on the back of an envelope, and I looked at the column, and the floor went out. I had been telling myself a story about a rich woman buying my daughter away from me. It is a good story. It has a villain in a nice cardigan, and it lets me be the one who was robbed. But the column on that envelope is a bid. That is all it is. Every month, on the 1st, for 7 years, I put money down on a chair at my own table. And I never once said out loud that that was what I was doing, and neither did she. And so we both got to pretend it was love. Adrienne Appel did not out-scheme me. She outbid me. And the reason I could not see it before that evening is that I had been in the auction so long I thought the auction was the family. At 20 minutes to midnight that Wednesday, I logged into my bank on a laptop with a cracked hinge, and I found the standing transfer, and I canceled it. It takes almost nothing. There is a confirmation screen, and it asks if you are sure, and there is a button. Then I texted my daughter because I was not going to let her find out from a declined autopay. I kept it plain, and I did not put a single accusation in it. I told her I was stopping the transfer on the 1st. I told her it was not to punish her. I told her the true part, which was that I could not keep paying for a seat. Then I put the phone face down and I went to bed, and I slept straight through until the alarm, which frightened me more than anything else that week, because it meant some part of me had been standing guard over that $600 for 7 years without ever telling me. If you are still with me, I know some of you are hearing your own bank app right now. That standing transfer with somebody's name on it. I am not telling you to cancel yours. I am telling you what it cost me to cancel mine, and what came back. Stay to the end for that part. Comment where you are watching from, and subscribe so you do not lose the thread. My phone lit up 9 minutes after I sent it. It did not stop. Grant called first at 7 the next morning, and he was not angry, he was bewildered, which is worse. He kept saying he did not understand what had changed. Wade texted that I was making it worse and that this was not like me, and he is right. It was not. And that was rather the point. Marissa sent a long message and then a short one and then nothing at all. And before 10 that morning, Adrienne left a voicemail. She did not raise her voice. I have never heard that woman raise her voice, and I no longer think she can. She said she was disappointed. She said that whatever was going on between me and my daughter, taking money out from under a young couple over a hurt feeling was, and I am quoting her, beneath you, Holly. And then, at the end, when she should have hung up, she kept talking. She said her own mother spent the last 14 months of her life in a county facility outside Marion because in 1998 Adrienne did not have the money to move her somewhere better, and that she used to drive up on Sundays and sit in a room that smelled like bleach and listen to a woman apologize for being a burden. Her voice went thin for about a second and a half. She said, "Nobody sends flowers to a woman who can't pay for the vase." Then it came back, smooth as a tablecloth, and she thanked me for my time and hung up. I sat in my kitchen with the phone in my hand for a long while. I understood her completely, and I did not forgive her at all, and I have learned that those two things can live in a person at the same time without any trouble whatsoever. Thursday morning, I took the eraser to my daughter's name. It came up cleanly, the way pencil does, and left the line dented where the graphite had been, and I did not write anything in its place. Then I went down to Stairwell B at 11:30 and sat on the step below Nell Delano while she ate a sandwich out of a grocery bag. I asked her what she was doing on Saturday the 20th. She said working the desk until 3. Why? I told her the hospital was giving me a plaque and putting on a dinner, and that honorees get 2 seats, and that I would like her to take the second one. She stopped chewing. Then she asked the question I did not expect, and she asked it looking straight at me, with her mother's face on. "Are you sure you don't want to save the seat?" And I said no, and I said it fast enough to surprise us both. I told her it is not a saved seat, it is a chair, and somebody should be sitting in it. She said yes. Then she said she did not have a dress, in the voice of somebody putting an obstacle up early so it cannot be used against her later, and I said, "Find one." And by Friday she had borrowed a navy one off a labor and delivery nurse 2 sizes up and safety pinned the back. I did not tell her about the envelope. Not a hint. I want that on the record because of what people said afterward. That girl walked into that room on Saturday night believing she was there to eat chicken and clap for an old woman she barely knew. At 3 o'clock on Thursday the 18th, I sat down in a conference room on the second floor with Bernadette Cray and Dale Brandt, and a form with 2 blank lines on it. I wrote the name of the fund first, the Ruth Delano Nursing Endowment. I had to spell Delano for the notary, Delano, and my hand was steady, and I was glad about that in a small, mean way I am not proud of. On the second line I wrote Nell Delano, and beside it, in the box for terms, Bernadette had already drafted the language, full tuition and a living stipend through licensure, aides and clerical staff eligible thereafter, 1 recipient a year, in perpetuity. Then, Dale slid the second document across, the one for the personal distribution, and I signed the line that declined it. $250,000, gone, in the time it takes to write your own name. My knees will be paid for the ordinary way, in installments. Like a car. Bernadette put the designation in an envelope and sealed it in front of me and initialed the flap, and she said the Kessners would love it, and she meant it, and she went to a meeting. Dale stayed a minute. He is 60 and he has a lawyer's way of saying important things without any weight on them at all. He said, "You should know the practical piece. Any time before that envelope is opened on the air you tell me, and it changes. 1 sentence to me is all it takes." I said I understood. I thanked him. He put the envelope in a portfolio and zipped it. I have thought about that sentence every single day since, and I thought about it hardest on Saturday, standing in a hallway with an iPad in my hands. Saturday the 20th came in hot and clear. The banquet room held 340 people, which is more than I expected and more than I wanted, and by 5 o'clock the parking lot had a Channel 9 truck in it with a mast up. There were nurses in that room I trained in 1994. There were 2 women who had been aides when I started and were grandmothers now. Arthur Kessner came in on a walker with his son on one side, 81 years old, wearing a tie with anchors on it, and he took my hand in both of his, and did not say anything at all, which was the correct thing. The plaque sat on an easel under a piece of navy velvet. On a side table near the door was a white arrangement, roses and stock, and something green, with a card that said Adrienne, Grant and Marissa Pell in a florist's careful hand. It was beautiful. It smelled like a funeral home, which is not the flower's fault. Nell came in at 6:10 in the borrowed navy dress with her mother's badge clip pinned inside the neckline where nobody could see it but her, and she stopped dead when she saw the head table. Because there was her name on the card at chair 2A, printed in that font like handwriting, and the chair was still turned a quarter out toward the room. She looked at me. I said, "Sit down, honey. They'll start on time." I had put my phone in my locker at 4, the way I have put my phone in my locker for 40 years. Dale Brandt stood at the end of the riser with a black portfolio under his arm. And at 6:21, a nurse from the float pool came across that room carrying the unit iPad and told me my daughter was calling and it sounded urgent. I took it into the service hallway by the kitchen, where the light is bad and the dishwasher runs. Marissa's face filled the screen, sunburned across the nose, hair wet, and behind her the beach house kitchen with a sliding door open and someone laughing outside. Adrienne stood at her shoulder in the frame, composed, hands folded, the way you stand when you have been invited to be in a photograph. A cousin of Grant's had seen the foundation's press release online. That is all it took. My daughter started talking and she talked fast, and it was not a fight. It was an offer. And it came in stages the way offers do. They would leave tonight. 9 hours? They would drive straight through. They would be at the Sunday dinner. They would come at Christmas. Both of them. The whole 4 days. Not the afternoon. She was crying by then, and it was real crying, my child, on a screen, in a bad hallway. And then, she said the last part. She said, "Mom, I'm 11 weeks. We were going to tell you in July." She let that sit exactly long enough. Then, "Put my name on it, it's for your grandchild." I heard the dishwasher change cycles. I heard, somewhere behind me through the wall, 340 people finding their seats and a microphone being tapped twice. My daughter was offering me every single thing I had wanted since 2013. Itemized, deliverable, in exchange for one line on a document that was sitting in a black portfolio 20 feet away. And Adrienne leaned very slightly into the frame, and her voice came down that line like something poured, and she said the truest sentence anybody said to me that entire month. "It's just efficient, Holly." I had maybe 40 seconds. Dale was at the end of the riser with the portfolio under his arm, and I could see him through the pass-through window, and one sentence to him would have changed everything, and I knew exactly which sentence. I had it built and ready in my mouth. I thought about my right knee. I thought about $61,000 and a furnace that clears its throat. I thought about a baby I had not known existed 4 minutes earlier, and about a Christmas with 4 whole days in it, and about a photograph under a brass plaque that would have made every hard year add up to something. And then I heard the ledger open. That is the only way I can describe it. I heard the sound of a column being started, and this time I was the one with the high bid. And my daughter was the item, and my grandchild was the interest on the loan. 7 years of first of the month. A wedding. 4 tires. A chair I had been paying rent on since she was 20. Adrienne Pell had not stolen my daughter from me. She had simply been better funded in an auction I opened. And I understood, standing in a service hallway in a building I had given my whole adult life to, that if I wrote my child's name on that line, I would win her back at the exact price that had cost me her in the first place, and I would have to keep paying it every year until I died. So I said the only thing I had left to say, and I said it quietly, because I do not raise my voice either. I told Adrienne that she had been paying my daughter to stay, and that I had been paying her to come home, and that we had simply had different budgets. Then I said, "I'm done bidding." And I ended the call. And I did not say one word to Dale Brandt. I set the iPad face down on a steel counter next to a rack of dinner rolls, and I walked out into that room, and the whole way to my chair I could feel my grandchild leaving with the call. At 6:40 the light on the camera went red. Bernadette did the introduction, and the Kessner family stood up, And Arthur said a few words about a February night in 1998 that he does not remember, and I do. Then she opened the envelope. She read the name of the fund first, and I watched it land on the room in a wave, front tables to back. The Ruth Delano Nursing Endowment. $1 million in perpetuity, for the aides and the clerks and the people at the desk who never got to finish. There were women in that room who had worked beside Ruth for 30 years, and one of them made a sound I will not forget. Then Bernadette read the name of the first recipient, and Nell Delano did not understand it. That is the part they kept in the clip that went around afterward. She sat there with her hands in her lap and her face completely blank, while the woman next to her started to cry, and then it arrived, all at once, and she put both hands flat over her mouth and bent forward. I got up. My knee complained, and I let it. I had a card in my pocket with a speech on it, and I did not use the card. I said that I had exactly one thing to give this place for 40 years, and it was ours. I said my friend Ruth Delano gave the same thing and nobody ever put her name on anything, and that was going to be corrected tonight. And then I gave them her line, the one she used to say, while looking straight at a very nice basket somebody had sent instead of coming, "Show up. Anybody can send something." I got to my locker at 9:45. The room had emptied out slow, the way those rooms do, and Nell had left with her aunt and a plate of cake wrapped in foil, still not entirely in her body. I turned my phone over and it took a moment to catch up with itself. And then it started stacking. 112 missed calls. 41 from my daughter. 22 from Grant. 9 from Adrienne, which for that woman is a scream. 30 from cousins and aunts and numbers I did not know, and 10 from people I have worked beside for decades, who had seen the clip and wanted to say something kind, and had gotten in the queue behind all the rest. I sat in my car in the north lot, with the engine off and the dome light off, and a bag of ice from the kitchen on my right knee, and I read the names down the screen, the way you read a chart. I did not call anybody back that night, not out of spite. I want to be exact about this, because it is the whole difference. It was not that I wanted them to feel it. It was that for the first time in my adult life I did not owe a single person in that list an explanation. For 40 years I answered every call on the first ring. That night I let the phone be a phone. It is the first week of August now. I did not get rich, and I want to be clear about that, because people hear $1 million and assume something landed on me. Nothing landed on me. I still owe $61,000. The right knee is scheduled for the second week of October, and I am paying for it over 36 months at an interest rate I would not repeat in polite company. I work per diem 2 days a week instead of retiring clean, because $2,900 a month is $2,900 a month, and I am on the 8 to 4 and off my feet by dinner, and I sleep. Nell started the program the second week of July. She is in scrubs again, in a classroom on Mondays and on the floor on Thursdays, and she has her mother's badge clip on the outside of her lanyard now, where everyone can see it. She still eats lunch in the stairwell sometimes. I have stopped trying to talk her out of it. Adrienne sent a card in the middle of July, heavy stock, her handwriting, gracious as a hostess at a door. Inside it was a check for $600 and a note explaining that it would come monthly for Marissa's expenses, so that nobody had to be uncomfortable. I put it back in the envelope and mailed it to her without a letter. She has not written again. She will own Christmas this year, and probably the one after, and the Pells will rent the same house next June and the June after that, and I have made my peace with the size of what I am up against, which is not one woman in a nice cardigan. Marissa and I text. It is thin and polite, and it is real, which is more than it was. And then, last Tuesday, at 4:10, I came around the corner from the medroom and my daughter was standing at the unit desk. By herself. No Grant, no Adrienne, no car idling out front. She had driven the 70 minutes on a workday, and she had not told me she was coming, which meant she had risked being turned around, which she has never in her life done. The bump had just started to show under a plain gray t-shirt. She was not holding anything. That is the part that stopped me, and I understand how strange it sounds, but I had spent 7 years watching that girl arrive with her arms full. a candle, a bottle, a bag with tissue paper. And this time, there was nothing in her hands at all. She had gotten as far as the desk and then run out of plan. She did not tell me I would be fine. She said she did not bring anything. She said she did not want anything. And then she said, "Is there something I can do?" I stood there for about 3 seconds, which at my age is a long time to spend not being useful. There was a stack of discharge folders that needed collating and a phone that was ringing. So I went along the wall and I got one of those gray plastic chairs and I set it down at the end of the desk and I turned it a quarter out, toward the room. Nobody cried. Nobody made a speech. It is not fixed. It is a Tuesday. The chair was never the prize. It was only ever a chair, and it only ever meant a thing when somebody sat down in it because they wanted to be in the room and not because I had quietly paid the rent on the seat for 30 years without telling anybody, including myself. My daughter looked at it, and she looked at me, and she waited for the speech she had earned and was not going to get. I handed her the discharge folders. I said, "Sit if you're staying." That's my story. 40 years, one empty chair, and a standing transfer I finally turned off. If there is somebody in your life you have been quietly paying to show up, you don't have to make a speech about it, and you don't have to burn anything down. Just stop the transfer and see who is still there in 6 weeks. If this reached you, send it to someone who needs it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.